Hello! Now before we get started with this video, you may notice that I'm in a different setting. This isn't my living room, no, this is my workshop, and it used to be a big shed that I used to store things in, but I've sorted it out, tidied it up, got myself a big table and some storage for all of my materials and tools and things, so it's now a really big functional workspace, and I can use this to build loads of cool things. Starting off with this video, it's going to be a clinger grenade from Fortnite. So before I get started with that, make sure you subscribe to this channel, hit the little notification bell and give this video a thumbs up. Right, now you've done that, we can get cracking. Right, so starting off here, this is a cistern ball. This is the floaty bit that goes into the mechanical part of your toilet. Just cutting the end off of that attaches it to the arm in your toilet cistern. I'm using a rasp file just to smooth that off a bit and to also remove the seam from this where it was a two-piece mould that made this part, I'd imagine. Now using a drill to put a hole in either end so we can stick a handle through it. So a small drill to get a pilot hole, and then a spade bit just to make that hole bigger, so it's the same diameter as the handle of a plunger. Just neaten up those holes with a little file. So this is the regular plunger with a long handle, and it's a tight fit to get that in there, but that's the idea, just so the ball doesn't fall off, and also so I don't have to glue it or anything, it'll just stay on there on its own. So the handle on this plunger is a little bit too long. I figured it needs to be about 12 inches. Mere mortals may choose to use a saw to cut this down, but I'm just going to karate chop mine off. Drilling a hole in the end of the handle now, and that's to put a little screw fixture in the end. It's a little eyelet thing. Just screwing that in. It gets a bit hard to tighten that by hand, so I've taken something like a drill bit here, put that through the end to make myself a little handle. This is a bit of pipe lagging. I'm just going to wrap that in some black tape because the hot glue, if you put that on the bare pipe lagging, can just burn through it. So I'm putting the tape on there to protect it. Just trimming that to size and then cutting the piece off. I'm roughing up the tape so the glue will stick to it better because we're going to cover this in foam. Problem though is it doesn't sit snug to that ball because it's got a flat bottom to it. So using a knife, holding it at an angle, I'm going to cut the bottom out to bevel the inside there. And that will now sit more snug against that ball. Before we cover that, I'm going to cut out some of the flights. There's 4 of those. So I've cut out a strip of foam here, and I'm cutting it down the middle to make it thinner. Obviously if you had 5mm foam this would be easier. This is 2 centimeters wide and they're 2.5 inches long. Well, that's the length I've gone for. It depends on how big the ball and plunger you're using are. So I'm making a little template and I'm going to trace that onto my bit of foam I've cut. So basically just tapers down one end. So it's 2 centimeters at one end and 1 centimeter at the other end. Before I can attach those, this needs to be covered in foam. So I'm going to put hot glue on a piece of craft foam, let it slightly cool, and then stick this bit of bare pipe lag into it. If that was straight out of the glue gun hot, it would just burn through the foam. If that's straight out the glue gun hot, it would just burn through the foam. Trimming around this with a pair of scissors, and now all it's left to do is to put some more foam around the outside edge. So putting glue on that, and remember that's protected with the tape. And then stick that down onto a nice straight edge piece of craft foam and slowly wrap that up. Once it's completely wrapped around, cut the excess off with a pair of scissors and your piece of pipe lagging is now wrapped in craft foam. Only thing to do is to cut a hole in the end so you can slide that onto your plunger handle. And again, that's a tight fit, it just slides on, don't need any glue or anything. So now it's time to stick those flights on, and they're all at 90-degree angles. To make sure I'm getting these straight, I've lined that first flight up with the seam you can barely make out because I've sanded it down on the plastic ball, and as obviously that seam goes all the way round, I can line this other flight up on the other side with the seam on the other side. That's all 4 flights on. I'm going to wrap the bits I don't want to paint in cling film here and some tape, because that plastic ball will take the acrylic paint better if I use primer on it first. This is just automotive primer. Before I've done this, I've sanded the whole ball down lightly with some fine sandpaper. Now these bits that are craft foam here are going to be the detail pieces. This frame piece is 4 inches tall, 2 inches wide. This little bit here just came out the middle of that. We'll use that for something later. And these little pieces, they're an inch shorter, so they're 3 inches tall, 1.5 inches wide. I'm just going to glue those on top of each other, make little cross shapes. So that piece out in the middle, I'm going to cut that into 1 centimeter strips, and they're going to make little cosmetic brackets for those flights. So it says 4 flights, and each flight has 2 of them. You're going to need 8, and you can get 8 out of one of those center pieces for one of those frames. Tiny bit of hot glue on one of those, and just push that straight in. I'm now sharpening a tool to cut out tiny little circles out of craft foam, and these are going to be fake screw heads and rivets and things. Just using a little pin there to get that out. Needed loads of these. And what is this tool, you're asking? Well, it's just a little round thing that is actually the end of a pen. You could use anything, a small brass pipe or something. Just sharpen it up and away you go. I'm sticking those little fake rivets on now, just 2 little dots of glue, and then apply 2 little circles that you just cut out. I wouldn't do more than 2 at a time, because by the time you get round to say the 8th one, the glue will be too dry for it to stick. And each of those little fake brackets also has 2 of those little screws. And the frames have screws in the corners. Just using a wood burning tool. You could also use a soldering iron just to put some screw heads in those little circles I cut out there. So it's just burning little crosses or flat straight lines for flathead screws. Now putting a little round detail piece on the top of the ball there. And I'm using a heat gun to heat those little cross-shaped things, just to give them a bit of curvature so they stick to the ball better. So loads of hot glue on the back of that. Using a pencil to mark out where I want those frames to go. And all of these detail pieces, the 2 frames and 2 crosses, are all at 90-degree angles to each other. So putting a bit of glue across the top of the frame just to stick that into place. Because if I get it wrong, it's easier to peel off a tiny bit of glue than the whole thing. So just on that top edge, and I'm going to leave that hanging. And do exactly the same thing with the one on the other side. So now I'm going to run glue down that frame that's hanging off the side there, now that I'm happy with the position of them both. And then working from the end I've already glued, I'm going to slowly push that into place. Do the same to the other end, and what you have to do is to glue on the other cross-shaped piece. Just a couple of straight pieces just to add a little extra couple of details. It's like a panel line that runs along each of those other details, so right down the centre of the frames and the centre of those cross-shaped pieces you're going to want a straight piece of foam. Now a tiny little detail on the end of the handle, it's like a metal trim, as if that hook on the end there, that eye, is like an end cap rather than being a thing that's screwed into the end, I suppose. And there we go, that's all the details on. This is now ready to paint. So I'm going to take it off of the wooden handle first so I don't get any paint on the handle, because then that would be another job to do, having to get that paint off again. The only thing that won't come off is that little trim on the end of the handle there. So I'm going to put the pieces onto a plastic pipe that's slightly too skinny, so I'm going to wrap a little bit of tape around that to stop those from wobbling about. So a little bit of electrical tape will make that bit with the flights on sit nice and snug. And then we don't want that ball touching that, so I've put a bit of tape around there as like a stopper for that. So the paint I'm using is just acrylic paint. I've got a bit of silver, which I think is a bit too bright, so I'm going to mix a little bit of black with that to give it a more gunmetal grey type colour. And I'm just going to brush this on. Before I've done this, I've heat sealed all of the foam pieces, so that's just using a heat gun and going over everything just to help close up the tiny little holes in the surface of the foam, which should give you a better, smoother surface to paint. And I'm just going to slather this on. Depending on the paint you use, you might need just one coat or you might need a couple of coats, but just apply paint until you've got the coverage you want. Using a smaller brush for that end of the handle there, and also a small brush to do the screw heads in just plain silver. And my phone stuck in my shirt there is my ingenious hands-free idea. If it's stupid but it works, then it ain't stupid. Bit of blue and white mixed together to make a really pale blue for the little light on the side there. And then just cover the whole thing in a clear lacquer and then hang it to dry. And here it is all finished. One Fortnite Clinger grenade. And all in all, it took me about 3.5 hours, and that includes the time it's taken me to mess around with the camera to film this video, and also waiting for paint to dry as well. So a really quick build, and a really cheap build as well. The only things I had to buy was the plunger and the ball I used. They're about £2 each. Everything else I had laying around, scraps of foam and blue and silver paint, but even if you had to buy those, you could get this whole thing made for less than a tenner, I'd reckon. So if you've got a spare afternoon, you want something to build, there you go. And I quite enjoyed making this. It's really cool. My kids are going to love it because they're really into Fortnite. So I think I'm going to make this a feature every couple of weeks. So it's going to be my fortnightly Fortnite prop build series, I suppose. So in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to build something else from Fortnite. If you've got a suggestion for what that should be, then drop me a message or leave it in the comments down below, and I'll see what I can do. So yeah, that's it for this video. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel if you like Fortnite, and if you like prop and costume building videos. And also be sure to head over to my Patreon page where you can get exclusive rewards, including all of these videos early if you become one of my patrons. And also check out the social media links in the description of this video. And remember, you don't have to be great at making to make something great. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.